Lindenhurst is a village of 27,000 on the south shore of Long Island, New York. These are the people who grew up there and their stories. Everyone I know is from Lindenhurst.
I moved here in, I guess it's been like permanently a year in June.
Okay.
A year this past June. I had been here for periods of time, like a few months here, a few months there, and then now it's been permanently for a little over a year.
Okay. Well, let's bring it back to the roots then. Talk about your family's origins in Lindenhurst.
Uh, my dad's from Copiague, my mom's from not Brentwood, Belmore, sorry, and then we moved to Lindenhurst when I was 4, I guess, and so I'm completely Lindenhurst through and through. And I had the fortunate ability to just to yeah, I feel like it was nice, man, growing up. I don't know how it is really at the moment for kids, but I feel like it sounds like an old person thing to say, but I feel like we were at a I don't know how old you guys are, but I myself am 36, so I feel like it was a nice cusp of culture still.
Yeah, we're a little older, but not much. So,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm 40, so not much older.
no,
Yeah.
around the same bracket. However, I'll say that the Lindenhurst is really, I mean, they've picked up steam in such a good way, being like the shops and you
Yeah.
know craft type of things going on in the town and the apartments coming in. I worked in restaurants on Long Island for so long, and I'm so glad to see Lindenhurst finally getting the same treatment that Farmingdale, Patchogue, and stuff. It was so well deserved.
Yeah. Yeah. You would have never seen like outdoor dining when we were growing up. That was just not a thing at all.
No, and it's a shame because so from my understanding, I used to go to oh my goodness, they're closed now, but it was a Venice barbershop, right?
Yeah.
And I used to go there, and he had told me that a big reason at the time was the church didn't want too much traffic to interfere and stuff with mass and such. And then that's what he had told me years ago. We're talking like 12 years ago. He told me this, and that was when there was nothing really going on. And I mean, I feel like truly, Lindenhurst is one of the few towns, just like Rockville Center, where the train cuts right through the heart of the village. So
Yeah.
it is an ideal location
Super
for
convenient.
big
Yeah.
times. Yeah,
So what part of town did you grow up in?
North Lindenhurst, but not super north, over by Outback and the town hall, and
Gotcha.
we
Off of Spiegelhagen over there.
literally, yeah, right off of Spiegelhagen, and
Yeah.
on
Gotcha.
North Erie. Yeah, and it was honestly, I it's such a fortunate. My parents chose a dead end street, and I feel like we were fortunate to do that because it created such freedom. You're not a whole lot
Yeah.
of through traffic. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I love Lyndhurst. I really do. It's got then the longer I see you guys post stuff like the history and things that I didn't even
Yeah.
know. I find that stuff super fascinating, super fascinating. And
Yeah.
what'd you post the other day? It had nothing to do with Lyndhurst, but it was where Gilgo Beach's name came from. That was fascinating. I read that to my wife. Like, it didn't mean anything to her because she doesn't even know what Gilgo is. But like,
Right.
I thought that was super fun. I hope that's a true story.
Where Gil goes to fish. Yeah.
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 Cool. So you were a roller then? You went to roll?
I did. Yeah. I went to Rawl. Yeah, I reached out to you guys about trying to hunt down a teacher that was such a prominent part of my whole life, like
Yeah.
just becoming who I am. Rawl was, yeah, Rawl was the Bauer twin, and it was. I feel like I have nothing bad to say about Rawl. Again, it was like some place that was. It was. I was able to figure out, yeah, it's just a certain type of person. I feel like Long Island in general, it's such a weird thing now because I'm split culture, and I feel
Yeah.
like Lindenhurst it's got classic movie vibes that you see in like 80s movies, and in addition to legitimate New York culture.
It's interesting, like growing up just outside of New York City, you kind of absorb a little bit of that, but it's
Yeah,
also classic suburbia as well. And especially in
and,
the 80s and 90s, that was really like flourishing.
big
So
time. And I
yeah.
think that's a unique thing that I'm sure Queens, Nassau, Suffolk, that we all share, where it's New York City meets suburbia, where, I would say Lindenhurst, probably like the Bayshore area is probably where that cuts off. I feel like after that, the New York City trickling goes away. I think
Sure.
that's when you start getting a little bit more straight suburbia.
Yeah. So what were you getting into as a kid? Were you always into music?
I guess, man. It was I was always into art. I was always drawing and painting, and I guess at one point sculpting. But music was always there. I always wanted to do music, but it was never. I didn't have any. There was no um, friends. You were either in the music area of the school with all the band guys and stuff, or you kind of had your own little group of people. And I didn't have either really. It was just kind of me and my friends. None of them were musical, so I didn't really have an outlet for it. But I was always into music. Always, I was ready. My dad's a singer songwriter, and it was a heavy influence. Elvis was a heavy influence in the house, and just they were always playing all sorts of throwback music, which was wildly important for how I developed. It was
Yeah.
music that was almost music that was old for my parents, and then I was still growing up loving that. So it really set me back in school. I was known as the Elvis guy. That was I'm cool with that, but still.
Yeah. Was he a full-time musician or what did he do for a day job?
No, no, my dad worked at National Grid, which was one when we were growing up was Lilco, and
Yeah.
he worked there for 30 some odd years. But I mean, he's a very talented singer and songwriter, and it was very influential. It was like, there's songs from your favorite artists. Like, all right, if I think of this artist, these are the two favorites. This is the side A, the side
Yeah.
B, and I had those, but it was my dad. It was my dad's song. So like, I knew his songs. They were famous to me, and it was also inspiring to see somebody who can sit down and pen an actual song, which, you get to enjoy music growing up, but not everybody is witness to song development. And I
Yeah.
think that also put me a step ahead in that regard.
Yeah. Was he gigging around at all?
I know he was too shy. He never wanted to do that, which is terribly unfortunate because I think he could have. I think his songs were very catchy. They were really good songs. He just never did anything with them. So, but and I think because he didn't, it gave me more fuel to do that myself.
Right.
It was like I always went with something that always helped fuel myself was that I always told myself, imagine your life at like 70 years old and look back and what are the things you regret not doing? You know what I mean? So do those things that you think 70-year-old you would regret doing or regret not doing. And
Yeah.
that was definitely one of them.
So, okay. So getting into like later on middle school, high school, were you doing like the school chorus and school band and all that?
I did chorus in Raw, but that's like everybody does. And then come high school, I wasn't doing it, but I mean, I was singing every single day. I would go and my parents have a finished basement and with a big stereo system. I would go down there every day for 2 hours every day and just practice vocals, listening to Tom Jones and Elvis. And then, I mean, amongst others. And I wanted to try out for Bosie's music, but I didn't know theory and all that stuff. But I had talked to my guidance counselor and I'd asked her, could you possibly introduce me to whoever runs the music department here in the school? I want to know before I audition for Bosie's if I'm good enough. And she was super nice and set me up with I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Pramnick's, um,
That was after my
but
time, probably. Yeah.
a phenomenal teacher and crazy hospitable. But he agreed to do so and meet me and tell me. And he met with me, and he's like, "All right." He's like, "Before you even start, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be brutally honest, though. Okay, no matter what you do, I'm gonna be brutally honest with you." I was like, "All right, yeah, that's fine," because I would rather him brutally honest than me go to this other what's known prestigiously and like so. And he was like, wow. Like I sang and he got done. He's like, okay. I'll tell you right now. He's like, before anything, I want you in my class tomorrow. He goes, that was unbelievable. And but he told me, he's like, because you don't know music theory, BOCES is not going to be the right place for you. You know, you're just going to be completely fall behind, and it's going to do worse for you than it would good. And I took that advice fine. You know, I was like, all right, cool. And he talked to the guidance counselor. They switched my class around, put me in there, and then they have a group of uh, like it's any word I use is going to sound douchey, but like an advanced singing group, and it's called the Odyssey. And I
Yep.
auditioned for
Right.
that, got in, yeah, and I got into that, and so that was like my only musical stuff that I did in high school. I think for the most part, had you asked anybody in high school, they would have all assumed I would have wound up a comedian, not because I was always a funny dude in class. I don't think anybody had any idea that I was into music like that. I don't think anybody had a clue. It wasn't something we talked about. I didn't have a high school band, you know, it just wasn't something I did.
Yeah. I mean, being funny as a singer is definitely a plus.
It's a huge plus. It's a huge plus.
Between song banter as well, you know?
You know, it's fun that you say that because that's such an important thing for me. You know, on Long Island, I had managed bars and bartended for years, and it gave me a lot of practice talking to people and work. You know, you test jokes out. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to test this joke out on 18 customers, and if it doesn't work, you know, so on stage that same stuff goes over huge because I can't stand when I see an act and in between songs they don't say anything. They're just waiting for
Right.
the next song. It's like that's how you lose people. That's how people start drifting to the bar and walking to go to the bathroom. You got to keep them in there till you're done. So yeah, being funny does help, but um, I think most signatures in my yearbook for high school was like, you know, regarding being a comedian, and then there was like one guy who wrote, he's like, just don't turn into a fat Elvis impersonator, and
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah, and yeah, and I mean the overweight part I'm okay with right now, but the
Uh-huh.
impersonator thing, uh,
That kind of segues into my next question was for some of your first jobs around town.
my very first job was in Lindenhurst, which is super fun to think about. Like, you know, I had prior to this, where that's the focus is like I never even thought how wonderful it is. Like a hometown job was. I mean, I don't think this is above any of our age groups, but Millie's Plasticraft. Do you remember
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
that? Yeah,
Had birthday
yeah.
parties there. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Many, many birthday parties.
yeah. And I had I had found at a garage sale around the block for me like an Elvis statue, and I needed plaster paint, so I was like 14 or something. My mom brought me there to get the plaster paint, and then she's like, "Hey, listen." To the manager, she goes, "And my son just got his work permit, you know, and they didn't even have a now hiring sign or nothing." But I worked there, I think, for 2 years or something. But that was a cool first job because it had a lot of things that you learn there, and I learned a lot from the guy John who owned the place. Millie was his wife, who they named it after. And I don't know, do you guys know what that building was?
No.
Before it was
So
Millie's, no idea.
this it's pretty cool history that I learned from him. So all of the houses built in that neighborhood were built because Millie's Plasticraft was a bayonet factory for World War One and or World War Two. I'm sorry, for World War Two. It was
Oh
a
shit.
bayonet
Yeah.
factory for World War Two, and it was built in three pieces. The first part was built in the early part of World War Two, with the very last part being built like 2 years before the war was over. And all those houses around it were built for the workers of the factory. And I mean, granted, this is what he told me, but he, you know, I'm sure he was pretty heavy our senior, so I'm sure he knew. But that job, you know, I got to, you know, you run the parties, so you're basically a babysitter. But that also, I've always been good with kids, and it was like it teaches you patience. It taught you responsibility to a different level because, you know, it's like every I feel like it's a cliche, like the girl growing up does some babysitting in the neighborhood. So it was like it has the equivalent of that, along with then we had to pack boxes of plaster stuff. So you had to be responsible for delicate items. And then in addition to that, the guy who owned the place was there was this thing about him where he had certain bits of wisdom. And you know, he was the first person to teach me the difference between nationality and heritage, because I feel like how many people like, oh, you know, what's your nationality? And so many people in New York are like, oh, I'm Italian. It's like, no, you're not. Like
You're
you're
American.
yeah, you're American, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and then your heritage though. And he was the first person to teach me that. And at 14, you're like, what?
Yeah.
And he told me because he was born in Italy, and he said he was 12 when he moved to America. And when I was talking to him at the time, he was like 65, and he goes, if you would ask me what I am, he goes, I tell people I'm an Italian, I'm an American born in Italy. And he goes, because he's like, I've been here since I was 12. He's like, I know nothing about Italy. He goes, I've been here my whole life. He's like, what I know is America. He goes, if I went back to Italy, they would look at me very strangely. That was, I
I
was,
always sorry, I always gave the people that work there a lot of credit because I remember being younger. There would be kids that would paint the most fucked up looking Ninja Turtle you'd ever seen, and then they'd give it to the people that worked there. It would come back looking good, like
yeah.
they touched it up or whatever.
Sometimes
So I'm guessing you did a lot of that.
Yeah.
I didn't have the skill set for that. That's not,
Okay.
but
I
yeah,
definitely have
but
I have a Batmobile somewhere that I painted.
me too.
Yeah, yeah.
Me too. I have from there. I have a Batmobile, a Ninja Turtle face, and Ren and Stimpy.
Nice.
Nice.
So Millie's was on
Yeah, I
Delaware?
still have those in New York. Yeah, yeah. It was on.
Scott lived across it covered a couple blocks. We had a friend who lived like right across the street from it, but I think it's like, is it Bird and like Fulton or something or over there?
Near the VFW, yeah.
Near
A
it,
little bit. It's a little bit further down, closer to the
yeah.
high school.
And now there's like four big houses where the property
Yes.
was.
Cool. So like, yeah, moving on from high school, did you go to college?
I did not.
No.
I knew what I wanted to do my entire life. I mean, you could have asked me at 5. You could have asked me at 15. It never changed. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a singer. That's what I wanted. And I've never been one for formal education. Not that I don't support it. I know it's not for me. It's never been something that I know would have benefited me whatsoever. I don't have studious skills. I can't sit down and be taught. It's very much like, my brain loses focus. I start thinking about other stuff. And but I knew I wanted to hone that craft after college. Technically, I went to college for like 2 weeks. My mom was, and my both parents were very adamant that I go to college. I'm like, it's gonna be wasteful. I know it's gonna be wasteful, especially when it's my independent decision to get there or not.
Right.
The 2 weeks I did go, I spent most of the time sleeping in my car, and it was like, this is a good time to nap. I'm gonna do that, and you know, but what I did do instead, I also made the very conscious decision to get a lot of different jobs for educational purposes. I was a carpenter for 2 years. I also built closets. I was a chef or a cook at a pizzeria. I managed a vitamin store. I did some personal training, but like, it wasn't because I was incapable and just moving around. I consciously made these decisions because I wanted an informal learning to give me a well-rounded base as a human being.
So you're a hands-on guy, more or less.
Yeah, I'm a big time hands-on. I'm way better hands-on than I am with anything else. I'm a slow learner, but if I'm hands-on with something, it's a better chance I'm going to learn it at all.
Okay, so about that time, like 18 years old, are you going out now and like kind of honing your performance?
I started, I started writing music, and it was like they were amateur, but that's how everyone starts. I did I started doing like little Elvis-y stuff. That was the first thing that kind of, oh, I should say, so it goes back to Raw, where my very first performance, I was 10, and it was the school talent show. And that was the first thing that gave me fire in my belly for wanting to perform. I remember sitting there in fourth grade the year before, seeing the talent show, and they said to us then, next year is going to be the very last talent show we have. And it was like, shit, okay. I was like, that's the year I have to do it. Like, I always wanted to. Every year they bring the classes in to see the talent show, and every year I wanted to do something. But that's for anybody, let alone a kid, that's a scary move. And I next year came around, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fucking do this. So I was like, I brought a cassette tape with Elvis singing Johnny Be Good. And I'm like, I'm gonna sing along with this. And the teacher, who the one that I asked you about, her name was Miss Brown. She saw me do that, and then she's like, "Do you need the song?" She goes, and she didn't do it for anybody else. There was so many other kids that were performing with the song and singing along with it. But for me, and that's what I really want to talk to her, because I'm sure she doesn't remember. But if she did, I would love to know, like, why did you think that I should sing free? Just freely sing with somebody else. And
Yeah.
what it did though for me is, we did that. I was in the Lindy spotlight, and that's a tiny household free thing. But when you're 10, that's huge.
It's
You know what I mean?
amazing.
Like,
Yeah.
you made
Yeah.
yeah, you made the paper. And all I remember, I was out with my mom, and we came home, and all of our neighbors are at the house with their copy to be like, look, you're in the paper. And from, again, 10 years old, you're like, what the so come 18, after that it piddled off, and then there was really no aspiration, like no active aspirational movement. And then I started doing, like I said, I did a couple Elvis things, because I went to the city, and I had seen they had unveiled the Reese's Elvis peanut butter cup, and there was this guy who got paid like $20,000 or some stupid number of money to come sing for this thing. And he did two songs, and he wasn't good, in my opinion. And I was like, you know what? If this guy can do this, I just have to prove to myself that I can do this well. And I did one gig in Lake George for like, I don't know, 1,000 people or something like that. And they say it was more, but it didn't look like more. So I'd never say it was more. And that gave me the movement. And then from there, I started my own group. So with music, I went down to Memphis and recorded my first song at the same studio Elvis recorded his first song. And
Was that Sun Studio?
gave me Sun Studio,
Yeah.
yeah. I booked a session down there. I went to Memphis all by myself. It was like, I said to somebody the other day, and it's true, in Lindenhurst, New York in 2009, there's not a whole lot of Elvis fans in my age bracket flooding on by. So it's like, I didn't have a whole lot of friends that were into the same thing. So I had to make the choice. All right, go by yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I booked a flight, but I talked to a producer friend of mine who introduced me to another guy I'm friends with and work with till this day. And I asked if he could make the song. And he did, went down to Sun. All right. But yeah, man. So it was, I started doing shows. I would say I started doing shows more around 20, 21, something like that. That's really kind of when I started having the drive and the active mind to group people together. Because that's the hard part. It's like, you can sing, you can play, but the hard part is actually assembling a band and forming a show. That's hard as shit. Even right now at this age, it's still super hard.
That's what I was going to ask. How do you find a band to play that kind of stuff with you at that point? It's a bit of an ambitious task for a 20-year-old to be like, hey, I'm 20. Let's get together and do these Elvis songs.
Well, at 20, yeah, around that time, it was more, I don't even remember how I met this. I have no idea, no memory at all how this band found me. This band, Fran Diamond. He's a cover band, or he was on the island. I have no idea how he found me, but I started kind of doing the Elvis songs with them, and then they wanted way too much percentage out of they sit me down one day, and they try to butter me up with like Elvis comparisons, knowing that if you're an Elvis fan and a singer, those types of comments and comparisons that are positive are gonna, butter your biscuit. And and then they're like, here's what we're thinking. We're gonna take 50%. And I'm like, no. So, but then after that, I didn't form my own band to do Elvis. I tried. I take that back. I tried, and I watch it. I don't even think it. I had it around here somewhere, but it was this DVD that I put together, and it's terrible. It's so bad. And I only saw it recently. In hindsight, I had a friend who owned an Elvis museum. He had millions of dollars of Elvis's real stuff, his cars, his glasses, his rings, his this, that, everything. And I was out in Vegas with him and met the guy who was booking his museum. And the guy goes, if you put together a good DVD to represent what you want as an Elvis gig, I will bring you out here and we'll book you. So I think I put out a Craigslist ad and just kind of assembled guys like that. And the guys were good. I wasn't. And I thought I was at the time, but I really, really wasn't. It was so I had no stage presence. I had no invitational energy and my buddy had said to me too though, he's like, if you knew that was your quality, you probably wouldn't have continued to pursue. He's like, so it's better that you thought you were good at the time. Because looking back, I was so resentful of why this person didn't book this gig. Be like, and now I look back, I'm like, I can see right now why you didn't book this gig. You suck. And so. Uh, but these were lessons learned. These were things that had to be done in order to get better.
Yeah. Well, just a quick detour. Speaking of Elvis enthusiasts in this town,
Yeah.
Do you remember the King and I Pizza in South
Yeah.
Lyndhurst?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We've spoken about it a few times in this podcast. The pizza wasn't great, but the guy who owned it was a big Elvis freak.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The King. And to be until you just mentioned it, I completely forgot about it.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done a vote for the best pizzeria in Lindenhurst?
Like an Instagram vote type of thing?
Yeah.
No,
No?
we just generally ask all the guests what their pizza place was, get a consensus that way. We'll ask you at the end, but
yeah, sure.
Okay. I guess so. Moving on, career wise, so you finally did get some local people to play with you. Now at this point, like, how does this progress as far as getting your name out there as an Elvis tribute?
I stopped the Elvis tribute almost immediately, and I was doing original music, and that's what I was known for. It was I had only wanted to do the Elvis thing, one, to potentially make money if it was booked in Vegas, but two, it was to prove that I could do it better than the guy who I saw get paid big bucks for, and that was just for my own personal reward. It was after that I didn't want to be associated with the Elvis name because it's hard. It's like the best comparison I can make is Jackie Chan said that he had done everything in his power to not be compared to Bruce Lee. He said, Bruce Lee kicked high, so he kicks low. Bruce Lee was serious, and he's comedic. So I would try to ride the line of where it was too much comparison, and I started pursuing original music, and it was way more rock based. If you go on Spotify, my first album was Last Train to Rock and Roll. We put out That's All Right, Mama, that I recorded at Sun, and that started the ball rolling, which it was a modern spin. No, if you heard it, it's also on Spotify. Nobody would ever know it was the Elvis song. You'd have to know the song to be like, oh shit, am I hearing the same lyrics? It's very different. And then did the original album. I don't really remember how my drummer, he was from Lyndhurst also, Will Nipper. He's now a police officer, I believe. But I knew. The rest of the guys were assembled. I met one dude when I was working at a bar. Brendan was my guitarist, and then he helped get the bassist, and it was kind of an organic thing. And that was the first group of guys that I had. And then the group changed. This guy leaves, this guy comes in. Yeah. Within the next few years, a couple people swap out. It's kind of how it goes. And then getting the name out there, I mean, I know it was tied to the Elvis question, but getting the name out there was, I kind of put my own influence and feelings into it, where I had I don't know if you call it hindsight or foresight, right? Whatever, but I only wanted to play a bar once. It was like, all right, every venue has to look better and cooler than the last for marketing purposes. So I did the first gig ever at what used to be Biddy Sprats. I don't know if you remember that bar. I think it's on Sunrise Highway over by the Bob's clothing. And
Yep.
Yeah.
It's had a bunch of different names over the years.
I don't know what
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a brand new one now too. I was back visiting recently, and it was a different name. And but then it was like, then we did Webster Hall, the studio. We played there a bunch of times. And again, these are things that they are cool. They were really cool gigs, but they also looked fantastic on paper. And then we did the Casino in Queens, the Resort World. and just kind of that's what I used to spread the word about who we were was purely by booking decent titled places that look really good on paper because that stirred interest. That
Yeah.
made people go like, "Oh shit, you played Webster Hall. Oh shit, you played the casino." And they were great, excuse me, great gigs, but not as prestigious as it appeared on paper.
Okay. And yeah, I did notice in your press kit, you did mention that you play Elvis songs that he wouldn't normally perform or that he didn't like to perform. And you kind of pull them out and like give them new life in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in a world where there's so many Elvis guys out there. I mean, all over the world. I think it's like 100,000 Elvis impersonators or some crazy number like that. Uh, they're all doing the same thing. They're all doing the exact same songs, the exact same way. They're copying every move, every song that he does, and it's like, even if I can do it really well, what am I bringing to the table that's making people go, oh, let me go see that show? So it's for me, it's like the thing about Elvis is Elvis has become almost a punchline. He's so mocked and joked, and if someone is to dive into his actual repertoire of music, he's there's no doubt why he is as famous as he is. He was insanely talented, and it's about bringing out songs that were huge hits that nobody really is familiar with because they never get played, and doing songs that came out after he passed away, songs that he could have done if he had lived longer. And it's been a big success because as a fan, I can recognize why I would want to hear that. It's like, oh, that's super cool. I never heard that song done with that Elvis spirit, and it creates a whole different excitement for the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, if you're really a fan of an artist, like you want to hear the album cuts too when you go to a show. You don't just want
Yeah,
to hear the greatest hits. So I imagine that's very because
no, no,
people love the hell out of Elvis, and I'm sure they want to hear that stuff that you're playing as well.
and they do. There were people that the first show I did here when I was in Sweden was somebody came up to me and was just like, thank you so much for playing that. And then other people were like, thank you for doing songs that Elvis never even did. They're like, I never even heard that song, but that song's great. And we just recorded an album actually, the band, and it is the last songs Elvis was supposed to record, but the last year of Elvis's life, he was done. I mean, he didn't want to do shit. He was in his house. The band lived in his house
Yeah.
for the last few months or something. And any time that they could get him to come down and record, he would do that. But most of the time, he did not want to record. So there's 6 songs that he never recorded for the last album he did. And now we're doing the album the way it should have been done and putting it out in the same spirit of great records of the late 70s. Like for me, Hotel California is the epitome of classic rock, and 77, you're talking top of the charts. So it's like, what if Elvis's people cared enough to help him get healthy and put out the best possible record that would pull non-fans off the street?
So is that all of his posthumous work? Was just that album?
Say that one more time.
After he died, was that all of his posthumous work that came out? Was just that album that he recorded that year?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That and then a couple songs that were like in the can that were dismissed by the company. Like it was, everyone knows a little less conversation because that was such a commercial hit, like literally in commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And the one we all heard that got famous was a cut from a live performance that no one ever heard about. That they were like, all right, we filmed it, we hear, toss it. And same thing with another song that came out a couple years later. But that was the only work that there was like that.
Okay.
And it was, and I heard the demos by my wife, a friend of my wife, he sent her like a clip of an Elvis podcast where they played little snippets. I'm like, holy shit, like I have to hear the rest of these demos. And I got a CD that was put out years ago of the demos that were handed to Elvis for that album. And the songs that he didn't record are fantastic. They were just upbeat in a time of his life where he wasn't feeling upbeat anything. And so we'll do the album in a healthy way where it's like, okay, I want Elvis fans to be able to put this record on and feel it in their soul of enjoyment. Like, oh my God, like imagine if like just create an illusion for their soul, an alternative 1977 where he wasn't passing away, but he was coming back instead.
And are you trying to figure out like sonically how to make it sound like from that time period, like with equipment
Yeah.
and like recording to tape and things like that?
Yeah, my buddy who's he's producing the record, and he's also our guitarist in the band, Noah. He has a studio here in Sweden, and like he just borrowed a clav, like a piano based instrument that is from a friend to because it was what was used on the record, and he has a tape machine that we're recording everything digitally, but then we will run it through the tape to gain that tape warmth. It's playing the field of like, all right, this is as close as it'll get without purely recording right to the tape.
Yeah.
But it's what the way I described it to Noah. What I want to do is, it's I don't want it to sound exactly like it did in '77. I want it to sound like a remastered album from '77. So you're gaining that warmth but clarity too.
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess that brings us to what led you to Sweden.
Yeah, during COVID, everybody took a huge hit. Especially I feel like the service industry, which is as I mentioned earlier, is what I did for years. I was a bouncer, I was a cook, I was a bartender and bar manager, and I was working at La Piazza in Huntington and making good money. And then COVID hit, and no customers anymore. And they tried to help the staff by rotating shifts of whoever wants to deliver food, but it just didn't work. It didn't work. There was no money there. No money there. That group of people in that neighborhood who have money to spend, they would order like $300 dinners and tip you, and I'm not exaggerating, tip you $3, and you're like, that doesn't even make sense. However, nonetheless, I had to supplement my income somehow, and I've been doing graphic design since I was 15 years old, and I was like, all right, you know what? Let me combine passions. I'm going to combine Elvis, and I'm going to combine with my graphic design and make merchandise that Elvis fans also want, because that's another thing. Elvis's company doesn't produce merchandise for people under the age of 75. And there are a lot of fans who have thanked me, which is such an awesome thing because I don't make a ton of money off of it. It was supplemental. It was purely supplemental. But to put stuff out that you can wear, it's something that I would be in a current store selling things like, okay, I want to see Elvis T-shirts that are on, let's just say H&M, Target, whatever, you know what I mean? Like semi current areas. And so I started doing that, and I put out one design in particular for Elvis before he passed away was going to open up a business, his business venture, and it tanked. But it was going to be tennis courts, racquetball courts. It was called Presley Center Courts, and he was going to open them up all around the states. And it never happened. But I found the logo, blew it up, cleaned it up, put it on a T-shirt, and Karen, who's now my wife, she saw it online. We had never spoken before, but she had saw it online, wrote to me. It's like, oh my God, this is great. Like, I need this. And we started talking because international fee for the T-shirt shipping was crazy. So I'm like, here, I'll tell you what, I'll send you a file for the T-shirt as long as you don't share it with anybody, so you can print it on a T-shirt for yourself on your end. And then we just started talking every day, all day. She's from here in Sweden, and we started talking August 2020. I came here to visit her in July 2021, and by September we were married. It was just one of those things where it sounds like such a ridiculous cliche that neither her nor I believed in, but like the when you know, you know. And that it is such a true statement. Neither one of us had wanted to be married. She was in a previous relationship where she had 2 children, but she never had intentions of getting married. It just wasn't her thing, and me neither. And then we met each other, and we were talking about the conversation started like, what happens with the COVID rules when that goes on? Like, if I had to marry you to see you again, I would 100% do that. And she was like, yeah, so would I. And then that was it. The decision was made, and it was the best decision I could have ever made. Moving here is so wonderful. From Long Island perspective, if I blindfolded you guys and I guess also tranquilized you and put you on a plane to come here, you would never know you were not on Long Island when you're here. You wouldn't know it. Visually, it looks exactly like where we live. We live in a town called Falkenberg, and it is, if you were at the beach, you feel like you're at Robert Moses. It looks exactly the same. The weather is usually the same patterns. It's so similar. When my sister came to visit, her and her boyfriend, fiance, sorry, her fiance, when they were here, they were like, I feel like I didn't leave New York. It's that similar. So much so that the pizza here is phenomenal. Swear to God.
Okay. Interesting.
You're closer to Italy, so
Yeah.
And I know that like people there speak even better English than we do, but are you learning some Swedish as well?
I have oh, it's over there. Flashcards I bought myself last time I was in the States for Amazon to start learning. You know, it was a lot. My in-laws are always asking our children if I'm learning Swedish. I'm like, I don't think people get it. You know, it's like I got here. My full-time job is a graphic designer, and I got that job also when I got here. It's a U.S. based job, but I still landed it when I was here. So new job, husband, new country. I'm a father of two now. That's a lot to take on in a year, you know. So learning Swedish on top of that, I don't have enough brain cells in my head, and I like to keep my hair for as
Right.
long as I can. So, but my intention is to learn. Everybody here, for the most part, speaks English. Not as much as you'd think, and I get why. It's the same reason why. You know, I don't know about you guys. I took Italian in high school, but I don't know any of it anymore. I don't
right.
remember shit.
Yeah.
So everybody here has to take English as their first, second language, but then they're also required to take two more languages. Um, so yeah, you know, it's so nice though. And that's the thing too. Everyone here, so you have the same visuals as Long Island, but you have this much calmer demeanor of what I would only imagine is like the Midwest, but
Yeah.
without that same slow pace. It's such a wonderful place. Weather is, when the winter is cold, but not as cold as New York. The summer is hot, but not as hot as New York. So those are two nice things, you know. Um, yeah, I think if it looked more unfamiliar here, I would feel less content. But it just was immediately feeling like I was still at home.
And so how did you go about finding musicians to back you up, Sweden?
Um, I my wife and my in-laws and everyone's always like how, because I had only been here a few months and formed a band like immediately. Um, I have one particular skill set I'm prideful on, that I would be like, yeah, I'm good at this, is producing. You know, I'm good at pulling things together, you know, pulling shit out of my ass to freaking assemble stuff. Not literally, because that's gross, but I was like, uh, I reached out to um, a friend who works part time at a music store in a city about 25 minutes away. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to make this flyer. I want to put a band together. If you can hang it at the music store, that'd be great. He did. There was nobody. He wasn't hearing from nobody. And he's like, you know what? Let me put you in touch with this guy Noah, who is running. He works at the music store. He does a lot of stuff there, but he's running a lot of things. He's balancing a lot. So I don't know what he'll do. We talked. I told him my sales pitch of what the act is and its intentions, and he was all in. And then he helped assemble everybody else. And then he worked with the drummer Ludwig Jonas on bass. He had played another band with him, and he played another band with John, the other guitarist. And then Ludwig played in a band with Peter on piano, and then Peter knew the saxophone guy, which is my favorite way for a band to assemble. When you hear of stories of bands that work well, it's always this real natural assembly. You know, this guy knows that guy, because it's easier that way. It's like, all right, well, I trust you. If you trust him, that's good enough for me.
Yeah. And they already have a rapport with each other. It's kind of like
Yeah,
that you kind of just like fall right into the work.
big time.
Yeah.
And they're professionals too. You know, like I'm sure any musician can agree that setting up a rehearsal is difficult as hell when it's a bigger band,
Yeah.
Yeah. But when do you do music as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I've played in very large bands as well. So I
And
get
that shit will drive you crazy.
yeah,
That'll drive you bananas because assembling a band bigger than I had my last band on Long Island. Uh, I mean, they were fantastic. Some of the best dudes. Those are guys that I truly miss. And we went by Zeiss and the New York Sound at that point. I had worked super, super hard. That's another, the songs that I did, I had done them all myself with my producer. And then after recording them, found musicians that were like, all right, I want us all to play this together, and then we'll do the next album as a group. It didn't work out because again, COVID hit. So it's like I worked years on this project, assembled such a good thing. We did a couple shows, 89 North, Rockwood Music Hall, and then COVID just boom, smashed down. Um, and but those guys, it was still difficult then. It was still like, okay, this guy's doing something else. Then you got people bail the last minute for something that you yourself may consider, unnecessary. Like, the worst thing is people that 5 minutes before rehearsal, like, sorry, man, I can't make it. You're like, awesome, cool. I'm glad the rest of us are all here without a basis.
right.
Uh-huh.
Sweet. But these guys are the utmost professionals. Like these guys really care for the cause. When it came to recording the album, everybody was dedicated to listen to the songs Elvis did in that era, so they knew what to duplicate, or not even duplicate, but be inspired by. And it's a lot. And luckily, all their English has since gotten better too. Now they have to communicate with my ass.
Right.
You know?
And so you guys went on to compete in an Elvis festival in Europe?
We did.
Yeah.
I got an invitation personally from there. Elvis only lived. I mean, he had a big. He's famous for having Graceland in Memphis. He had a house in Beverly Hills that became pretty popular, but he only lived outside the U.S. in one place, and that was Bad Naum, Germany, when he was in the army.
Mm.
And to the point where the town has statues of him. They have plaques of him. I mean, there's Elvis Presley Boulevard. It's everybody there is very Elvis based, and this festival's been going on for 21 years. And they reached out and they go, it's a non jumpsuit kind of festival where nobody's allowed to wear the wig, nobody's allowed to wear the jumpsuit, and I like that because you
Yeah.
can't hide behind the bullshit. It's you're either good or you're not. And so I got an invitation like, hey, listen, we'd like you to come out and compete if you'd be interested with your band. And that was the biggest challenge to get 7 other people. My wife's in the band too; she sings. So that it was just a difficult thing to get everybody to agree, but nobody hesitated. I mean, not nobody. I think my wife, she was the only one. It was just like, that was more so. But it was like, shit, we have things to do. I talked to the band. They were like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And the guy who was running it, he goes, I think you have a really good chance at winning. I was like, I don't think you should be telling me that. And but he's like, and so we go out. There's a bunch of other people, and we do. And then our horn guys couldn't make it, so I frantically reached out online I googled Bad Naum Germany horn players and found like this big band who forwarded an email to their horn section. Who then this guy Ron reached out to me, and Ron's a godsend. I mean, the dude was so great, and he was publicly promoting the gig, and he was so invested. And he was the one that tells me, he goes, it's the crowd who votes for who's best. I'm like, oh god damn. I think that's harder than a panel of judges, because what I learned is the common ear doesn't know what really sounds good. You know what I mean? It's like I've watched the common Elvis listener listen to guys who are singing out of key, and they're still like, oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, but
And it wasn't like you could fill the room with all your friends because you're in another country.
exactly
Yeah.
that. And I couldn't fly all 5 of them out here.
Sure. Yeah.
So it was, but it went over great. The sound guy said that we had pulled the most people to the stage by singing. There's like about 500-600 people that were just there going nuts. And I mean, it was hot as hot. I think when we performed, it was 97 degrees, and we were outside. and I mean, I was sweating bullets. You can't sing in shorts for this, and but it went over. I was like, I'm going to give it every ounce that I have. You know, it was a 10-hour drive, no, an 11-hour drive there and back. So, but because I knew I wanted to win for the sole fact that I need people to know who we are here, and it will help marketing in such a way that every poster we have says winners of the European Elvis Festival.
Yeah.
And then we got done performing, and there were two people after us, and the guy who runs it still says, like I said, there's still two more competitors, and he goes, "Did they tell you you have to come back here at 8 o'clock to be announced the winner?" I'm like, I still don't think you'd be saying that to me, like because if I don't win, I'm going to be pissed now, you know. And but we get there. I mean, it was great. It felt so good, and the band. It was wonderful to see what it did for them because nobody in the group is an Elvis fan like myself. They all know of him. They're all familiar with the music, but being there, seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people show up, and not the cliche, like real music fans, people that were there to have a great time, anywhere from their 20s to their 60s, just looking to truly enjoy live music and dance too, not just sit down. There was no chairs; they were dancing their ass off, and it fueled the band with passion for the project. It was a truly wonderful experience. We get to go back, and our prize was headlining next year in August, and so that's what we get to go do on August 16th, the anniversary of Elvis's death, which is very significant and an honor to be able to do that. Honestly,
has that win led to more bookings or just more interest in general in the band?
Yeah, it's led to more interest. I'd say, right now I'm working with an agency, thank God, who it's a guy who he works for a big agency in, I guess the best equivalent would be Manhattan, you know what I mean? Like, but the Swedish Manhattan. It's called Gothenburg, and it's about an hour from me. But he works there, lives where I live, and a friend introduced us. I reached out to him after we won, and I was like, "Hey, listen, here's a promo video from a previous thing we did, and we just won. Is there anything you can do?" And we sat down, and he's trying to create a plan for a tour, which would be wonderful because, again, I'm sure you're familiar also, being the one in charge of booking shows and stuff, that's so strenuous.
Oh yeah,
and it's that's a job by itself. So hopefully the gigs will just keep rolling. We have a few booked in advance. I just want to keep the ball rolling, and if somebody else can bounce that ball for me, that's way better.
Yeah, I guess as far as like future plans, you got that big headlining gig coming up and the album. Anything else on the horizon that you've got in store for the band?
We have a big show coming up in January. It's also about it's another city near us, but it's a big theater show to launch the album and to celebrate Elvis's birthday, and that should be really fun to be able to play these songs live. These are songs that not only, for the most part, I'd say 90% of Elvis fans have never heard, but they've certainly never heard them live. No other artist really has recorded them, and I'm trying very hard to book a show on Long Island in the summertime. I want very, very badly to try. I try to reach out to. I have some friends contacting venues. I wanted to do it at the Suffolk Theater in Riverhead or Bolton Theater in Bayshore. But that's really a strong goal of mine too. I would love to do a Long Island show. I think that would be very important for me.
We'll definitely shout it out.
For sure.
But bringing it back to Lindenhurst, I guess we'll do a little best and worst of the Hearst because we mentioned it earlier with you.
Yeah.
So I'll let John take over from here.
All right. So let me ask you: what was your best teacher you remember having in Lindenhurst?
Best teacher?
Yeah,
Miss Wishniak
okay.
from middle school. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
So I had her as well. I think she passed away maybe in the last year or so. Yeah.
It was devastating. Yeah, I was there. I was at her. We were close. As for the most part, we stayed in touch over.
They memorialized part of the middle school field to her or something, I think.
I heard that as well. Yeah, it's so nice. I mean, that was such a loss. that really was such a loss. That was she was so wonderful. She was so nice, and she was truly such a part of my life. It was. I mean, we went to a couple. It was like, she came to one of our barbecues. We went to one of hers, type of thing. I know we went to her during COVID when everybody was doing those birthday parade things. We had some stuff at
Mhm.
her house, and then, I mean, it seemed like months later she was gone. That was her funeral was that was one that got me super strong. But yeah, she was definitely the best teacher, the most down to earth human teacher who didn't take any shit, and I loved that. You know what I mean? Like, she would be there to put you in your place, but then she was so full of love.
Right on. Let's go with the best pizza place.
I think I'd say Mr. G's. That's my favorite.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
Controversial pick.
is it? Why?
Yeah, a lot of people don't think it's that good, and you being a North Lindenhurst guy, I would have thought you would have picked Imperial.
No, I mean, Imperial's okay. I think I like Mr. G's better. I never was an Imperial guy growing up. I like it though. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
Gotcha.
it is very good. But I think Mr. G's, aside from, I like him himself as a person, but I
Mhm.
just what has I have to ask, what has gotten the most votes from Lyndhurst?
Roma.
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 Roma for sure. Yeah.
I can't. I think I've only had Roma once or twice in my life.
Well,
Yeah,
we'll give an
yeah,
honorable mention
for
though
me, it's
to King and I for the atmosphere at least. The pizza was not good, but
yeah. Or how about, remember, it's not there anymore, but Filicetti Brothers was pretty great, I thought.
where was that?
Oh, that's next to the ice place, next to Ralph's, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Brothers
yeah.
Ices
They've been
before it was
closed for a long
Ralph's
time though.
Ices. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
Best place to get alcohol underage.
I never
There
did.
you.
I never
That's
did.
the
So
right answer, officer.
Neither did I. Yeah.
and an honest answer. Yeah, a truly honest answer though. I know a lot of friends of mine though would go to Taklay Lao for their alcohol.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, and people. What's hilarious about that is I've heard people have been doing that. Like my dad, like
Uh-huh.
people have been doing that for years, going to Taklay Lao for their underage alcohol. But yeah, you guys would know. This has been something that drives me crazy. I was talking to my best friend. Nobody can think of what was the play. Do you remember All Natural Gym?
Yeah.
Yes.
My mom worked there for a while.
Really?
Yeah, she was a trainer.
I bet you I'd know her by face because I worked there for a little while too.
You probably would.
Uh,
Yeah.
but well, did she work there when Frank owned it or Pat?
I'd have to ask her. I'm not sure.
Okay, but
Yeah.
but there was a place, a bar, a couple blocks west of All
Graders.
Natural. What
Graders.
is that? What it was?
And then it was called Lefties after that for a
Lefty.
while. Yeah.
That's the
Yep.
name. Oh my god, dude! You just took pressure off my chest for like 6 years. I couldn't remember the damn name, man. Oh my god, because the owner would always go there for wings and stuff, and I left these. Oh my god, I'll be able to sleep really good tonight. Thanks, man.
What else do we have? Favorite hangout spot. Where did you find yourself hanging out the most in Lindenhurst?
I would say the South Docks on the end of
There you
Wellwood
go.
Docks. Pretty often. I feel like if I wanted to just go chill with some friends and enjoy, it was the docks.
That's pretty much it on our end here.
Cool. So I guess we'll wrap it up
Yeah.
with the question we asked everyone. If you could describe Lindenhurst to somebody who's never been there, what would you tell them? I bet you're doing a lot of that right now, being an expat, you know?
Yeah. you know, I it's hard to I feel like it's hard out of New York because I don't really get the opportunity to describe it other than, your cliche residential neighborhood because when I'm here and people are like, where are you from? And I say New York, people always think the city. I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I'm not a city guy. I don't like New York City, never been. But if I had to describe it, it did you say how many words?
No.
Okay, because that would be difficult. But it'd be,
Yeah.
I'd say I would friendly attitude. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people are friendly, but people also have attitude. I see my light died behind me. I uh, friendly attitude. I think caring and caring. You know what I mean? I feel like even though on Long Island, Lindenhurst usually gets a bad rap for some reason, which I've never understood. I feel like there are way worse towns that you can find yourself in.
For sure.
I feel like that's an overall difficult question, but I think for the most part it would be friendly attitude.
So friendly plus attitude. Friendly with an edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friendly. Yeah, exactly. Because it is. There's an edge there, man.
Yeah.
I feel like it feels like it's such a loving town, but you also, I'd say I wouldn't. I feel like people. I don't know, man. I do love Lindenhurst. All this talk makes me miss Lindenhurst very much as we talk about it. I wouldn't be one to have anything bad to say about Lindenhurst. I know some ex-Lindenhurst people would be like, oh, where are you from? Unfortunately, Lindenhurst. Like, why did you say unfortunately?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up, just let everybody know where they can find you online, where they can get your music and your merchandise.
Pornhub. No. www.tcetribute.com. tcetribute.com, and everything is kind of available there, or Instagram, Matthew Zeiss, and everything's pretty much those two places exclusively. I do Facebook purely to share Elvis stuff, but Instagram and the website.
Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. It's actually been super fun to talk about Lindenhurst in depth and stuff. That was really awesome, truly.
Forever, my darling, our love will be true, always and forever. I love only you. Just promise me, darling, your love in return made us find.
Long live the bench.